Me now, Senators Hirono and Jeff Merkley, both of whom are visiting the migrant detention centers in Texas this weekend. Also, Maria Teresa Kumar, President and CEO of Voto Latino. Senators, I'm going to start with you. And Senator Hirono, we know that the Inspector General of the Department of Homeland Security has said they are going to investigate this child's death. What do you know? What have you been told so far about how she died and who was responsible?
Well, this is why we need an Inspector General report as well as an autopsy to find out what really happened to this little girl. It is a tragic death.
And Senator Merkley, I know that you've been to the Tornillo facility. I've been to that facility. It is a camp, a prison sort of camp for children. So we know that we know some of the conditions that children are being held in. But with this specific case of Jacqueline Kahl, one of the issues was dehydration. We're going to show some video, which you probably can't see just the way that you guys are on a live view camera right now. But there's video of Border Patrol agents dumping water on the ground, water that was meant to be left for migrants. This is from the Tucson-based aid group, a Tucson-based aid group. What do you know about whether water is being provided to migrants when they are picked up near the border?
Well, I can tell you I've been assured that water is the first priority when migrants are picked up. I don't know that that is happening, and that's why it's so important to have congressional oversight and hearings and pressure. And the idea that anyone would turn over emergency water, which is essentially like sentencing someone to death in the desert, it would be a horrendous, horrendous act.
Yeah, I want to read very quickly.
Joy,
no, go ahead. Yeah, please jump in, Maria Teresa.
I'm
sorry, Hirono. I'm sorry. Senator Hirono, go ahead.
Yes, we're here at Tornillo where these are all unaccompanied children. So in the case of the little 7-year-old girl, she was with her father. But can you imagine the thousands of unaccompanied children who are at this facility, so-called temporary facility in the middle of the desert? And they want to call it temporary so that they don't have to actually put in infrastructure that will provide water and electricity. They have their own generators, and they bring water in every single day for the kids who are here. We should not be locking these kids up at all. And while their physical needs may be met here, clearly these are kids that have gone through a lot coming here on their own, and their mental health needs are very much a concern of ours.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's the point we really need to drive home is...
So, Joy, I think one of the things, too, is Tornillo is only one of 2 federal campsites for children, where because it's on federal land, there is absolutely zero oversight from local officials, from agencies that can actually make sure that the kids are getting the needs that they have. But I would love to follow up a little bit on what Senator Merkel said. We need to have clear answers and oversight. Right now, we have 13,000 children that are minors in these types of detention camps. What is the government planning on to do? Who is going to be held accountable? I would love to hear a little bit more from the senator on, how can the American public ensure that there is transparency in what is happening with these children?
Senators, we'll start with you, Senator Merkley, and then Senator Hirono.
Almost every conversation we have, the number goes up, and we're told that number is now 15,000 children. And think of that, 15,000 children in child prisons, Trump administration child prisons across America, and they are planning to add a couple more, one at a military base here, an Army base, and another at an Air Force base. And so this is this system of locking children up behind the barbed wire, which maybe you all can see in the background, I'm not sure, but this, don't call them anything other than child prisons or internment camps. That's what's going on here, and we're told that there are children who have been here 3, 4, 5, even 6 months long. And the trauma is being inflicted as part of a political strategy. To hurt children deliberately as part of a political strategy, we need to have everyone in Congress and in America rise up and say this is wrong, it has to end.
Indeed.
Well, everyone in America was horrified when the Trump administration decided that they should separate children from their parents, and then the chaos that followed when they were told by a judge, you better reunite these children. In this facility, they are unaccompanied children. The job of Health and Human Services, which oversees this facility, is to find sponsors for these children. And the administration has made it harder for sponsors to come forward because many of these sponsors are undocumented, and if that information is shared, which now it is, being shared with ICE, then they can undergo deportation proceedings. So not only are these kids here for longer than they should be, but the effort to find sponsors for them have been stymied.
Yeah.
There's a chilling effect going on all across the board here.
Absolutely. I want to really quickly ask the senators before I go back to Maria Teresa. There's a piece of reporting from our own Cal Perry, which is chilling. It's making its way across social media, and people are all horrified by it. I want to play a little bit of it. Hopefully the senators can hear it. Take a look.
2 months ago, the Trump administration cut a backroom deal with the Mexican government, one that is of questionable legality. That deal was to keep migrants in Juarez at a center, Casa de Migrantes, in Juarez, a center that we gained access to today. And what you see at this center are children with their moms and their dads with numbers written on their arms. Now, the U.S. government told Mexican authorities to assign numbers to these individuals. Local groups in Juarez, they made the decision, Lawrence, to write these numbers on their arms. This is called metering. This is the slow dribs and drabs of people allowed into the United States. So people are there waiting, and they're only coming across 60 people at a day.
Senators, are you hearing these reports of children having numbers written on their bodies, on their arms?
It's the first time I've heard about the numbers being written, but this metering strategy in which Border Patrol guards are placed in the middle of the bridge and turn away anyone who's seeking asylum, anyone who doesn't have a visa or passport. I saw this myself at McAllen, Hidalgo port of entry, and this is in violation of U.S. law. It's in violation of international law because people have a right to assert asylum when they come to the border. And the irony here is the administration has been telling the world, we don't want people to cross between ports of entry. We want them to come to ports of entry. But then they come to ports of entry and they are rejected on the bridge and sent back into Mexico. Sometimes they're sheltered, sometimes they're not. They're extremely vulnerable being sent back with no support structure back in Mexico.
What Senator Merkley is describing is your classic catch-22 situation where these people are told, go to the border crossing, and then when they go there and they've already gone through an arduous, dangerous journey, then they're told, sorry, no room at the inn. And so, as to the numbers being written down, this just goes to show the administration's attitude toward immigrants, that they're not human beings. We are dealing with human beings. We are dealing with young children. And that's what this administration needs to get across. And this is what the people of our country need to understand is these are human beings who want to have a chance at a better life in our country. We should give them that chance. Yeah. That's the law, by the way.
And Maria Teresa, I want to play you one more piece of sound and let you respond also to the numbers being written on children's arms, which is pretty shocking to look at. But I want to play you Hogan Gidley. I think you and I both might know Hogan.
Yes.
You're typically a pretty good guy who's now working for the administration. Here he is responding to this death of this little girl, of Jacqueline Call. Take a listen.
It's a sad time, but it's also senseless. It's a needless death, and it's 100% preventable. If we could just come together and pass some common sense laws to disincentivize people from coming up from the border and encourage them to do it the right way, the legal way, then those types of deaths, those types of assaults, those types of rapes, the child smuggling, the human trafficking, that would all come to an end, and we hope Democrats join the president.
It's tough to see somebody that you know is speaking in this way, towing the line, obviously. But what do you make of the seeming kind of callousness of the way that the administration has responded to the death of this little girl and their attitude toward those who are legally seeking asylum at the border?
Well, let's be clear. Secretary Nielsen basically is saying that it's nobody's fault but that of the person trying to make desperate choices during desperate times. But she and the president have created this directive. They are closing ports of entry where people can actually present themselves legally. They are basically telling people disingenuously that they have to turn back because the country is full. They are tear gassing families as they are trying again to do it the right way. So they are forcing these individuals to seek and come into our border. So when Secretary Nielsen is saying that there is no other way, she is not leveling with the American people. Most other administrations, they have allowed people to cross legally, and then they provide people with ankle bracelets so that they can come back and hear their fair day in court. Let the courts decide. But this is nonsense. This is complete fodder for the base, and unfortunately, it's harming individuals. So I would love to know what we can expect from a new Congress where we can actually hold these individuals accountable.
Very quickly before we go, Senators, will there be hearings on this? We know that there's been a statement from Nancy Pelosi saying all Americans grieve the tragic death of a young girl whose family sought a future of freedom and safety for her in our country. As Homeland Security Inspector General opens an investigation into the innocent child's death, the Congress will also investigate this horrific tragedy to ensure the safety and security of every child. So we can expect the House to take action and have hearings, but the Senate is still controlled by the president's party. In your view, Senators, will there be hearings on this in the Senate?
I have called for them.
Go ahead.
Both of us have called for such hearings. My hope is that when the House, thankfully, in Democratic control, so there's at least a level of checks and balances here, where they have their hearings, and what comes out of those hearings will put a lot of pressure on the Senate to do something also.
Yeah.
No, it is an absolute shame. It's unacceptable that the Republican leadership has not held hearings in the Senate or in the House at this point. The Republicans have been okay with this horrific implementation of tragedy against children, inflicting trauma on children as a political strategy. I've had many of my our colleagues come up and say, I really don't like what's going on. And I say, can you stand up publicly and put some pressure on this? And they say, well, maybe I can whisper to some of Trump's staff that I don't like it. That's not enough. We need to stand together as Americans with the symbol of the Statue of Liberty and say people need to be treated with respect and decency as they await their asylum hearings.
Indeed. Senators Mazie Hirono and Jeff Merkley, thank you very much. Maria Teresa will be back later in the show.